I never imagined my only son's wedding would end with me being told to leave the very event I had built from the ground up. My name is Laura Mitchell. I have lived my whole life in New York, raising my son Ethan alone after his father passed when he was just 5. Every shift I worked as a nurse in Queens, every dollar I saved, had been poured into making sure Ethan had a future I could be proud of. When he announced his engagement to Sophie Carter, I told myself it was worth every sacrifice to see him happy. The wedding had become my project. I took out a $55,000 loan, added my own savings, and carefully arranged everything. The Manhattan ballroom, the flowers from Brooklyn, the caterer in Long Island City, the photographer from Queens. Every signature on every contract carried my name. I wanted Ethan and Sophie to have a day filled with beauty and love. But on the night of the rehearsal dinner, the illusion shattered. The room was filled with laughter and soft music until Sophie's voice cut through the air, sharp enough to make every head turn. She looked straight at me, her manicured finger pointing, as though I were a trespasser. "You have caused enough damage, Laura. You are not welcome here." The words seemed to echo against the walls. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. But the silence that followed confirmed it. Dozens of faces turned toward me, waiting, watching. Some tried to hide their curiosity behind polite smiles, but I saw it. The quiet approval in Sophie's friends, the uncomfortable shifting of relatives in their chairs. I looked at Ethan, my son, the boy I had carried through fevers, exams, heartbreaks, the boy I had worked double shifts for. He stared at the floor. Not a word, not a single defense. His silence was worse than Sophie's cruelty. My purse felt heavy in my hands. Inside was the cashier's check for $55,000, the final payment for this so-called dream wedding. A lump rose in my throat, hot and bitter, but I forced it down. I would not cry, not here, not in front of Sophie, not in front of strangers who saw me only as an obstacle. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the exit. The music had stopped completely. My heels clicked against the polished floor, each step louder than the last. The doors closed behind me, muffling the whispers. By the time I reached my car parked along a darkened Manhattan street, the anger had hardened into something else, determination. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the skyline shimmering across the river. If I was not welcome, then neither was my money. They would learn that the fairy tale they thought was theirs had been built entirely on my back, and I was done carrying them. That night I barely slept. The city outside my window buzzed with the constant rhythm of New York, but inside my small apartment in Astoria, the silence pressed in heavy and unrelenting. I sat at my kitchen table, the wedding binder open in front of me. Every page was proof of my devotion. Contracts for the Manhattan ballroom, receipts from the Brooklyn florist, schedules from the band in the Bronx, and invoices from the Long Island City caterer. Each tab neatly labeled, each document signed with my name. I flipped through them slowly, the weight of every signature pulling harder at my chest. For months, Ethan and Sophie had done nothing but send me Pinterest boards and complaints. Too many roses, not enough variety in the menu. Could we upgrade the lighting, the chairs, the champagne? And I had nodded, smiled, and written the checks. I had believed foolishly that giving them everything they asked for would guarantee me a place in their happiness. Now the truth was laid bare. I was not part of their happiness. I was only their wallet. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling not from fear but from resolve. The first number I dialed was the ballroom. "This is Laura Mitchell," I said calmly when the manager answered. "I hold the contract for the Mitchell-Carter wedding tomorrow. I am canceling effective immediately." There was a stunned silence on the other end before the man cleared his throat. "Ma'am, are you certain?" "There will be a large cancellation fee." "I am within my rights," I replied evenly. "The payment and the deposit came from my account. Terminate the booking." His voice softened, cautious now. "Understood, Ms. Mitchell. We will process it." I ended the call and felt something shift inside me, like a spine straightening after years of bending. Next was the florist, then the caterer, then the band, then the photographer. One by one, I pulled the threads loose, dismantling the fantasy Sophie had built on my generosity. With every call, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Each vendor confirmed, each cancellation noted, and with every affirmation, my voice grew steadier. By the time I closed the binder, the decision was final. Without me, there would be no wedding. Morning came with a pounding on my door. I didn't need to look to know it was Ethan. His voice cracked through the wood, harsh and desperate. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" I stood inside, calm in a way I had never felt before. When I finally opened the door, his face was flushed, his eyes wide with panic. "You chose her silence over my dignity," I told him softly. "Now let her pay for what she wants." His mouth opened, but no words came. For once, it was me who left him in silence. The calls began before I even finished my morning coffee. First, it was my sister Marion, her voice tight with urgency. "Laura, I just heard from Ethan. You canceled everything. You can't do this. He's devastated." I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me like cold water. "He was silent when Sophie humiliated me in front of 50 people, I said quietly. "Did that devastate him?" Marion hesitated, then sighed. "You need to be the bigger person. Weddings are stressful. People say things they don't mean." I hung up before she could continue. Minutes later, my phone rang again. An unfamiliar number, but I knew the voice immediately when I answered. Michael, my ex-husband, Ethan's father, the man who had walked out on us years ago for a new life in Boston. "Laura," he said sharply, "I just spoke with Ethan. What the hell are you doing? You're ruining his future." I gripped the phone tighter. "Where were you when Sophie told me to leave? Where were you when our son stood there and let her humiliate me?" "This isn't about you," he snapped. "This is about Ethan. Stop being dramatic. Let them have their day. Reinstate the payments." There it was again, the same line I had heard all my life. "Be quiet. Be the bigger person. Sacrifice yourself for peace." "Goodbye, Michael," I said coldly, and ended the call. For hours, the phone would not stop buzzing. Cousins from Staten Island, an aunt from Albany, even a friend I hadn't spoken to in years, all telling me the same thing. Don't ruin the wedding. Don't let pride get in the way. Be the bigger person. I set the phone down and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. My face looked pale, tired, older than I remembered. But behind the lines, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, a sharpness, a clarity. I remembered my own wedding day decades ago. Standing in a lace dress in a small Brooklyn church, my mother-in-law had taken me aside, her lips curved into a stiff smile. "Quiet women keep the peace," she had said. I nodded then, young and naive, swallowing every wave that rose inside me. But that girl was gone. Quiet had not kept the peace. Quiet had erased me. The voices on the phone blurred together. Accusations, pleas, manipulations. None of them mattered anymore. I finally saw the truth. I had never been family to them. I had been a wallet, a nurse on endless shifts, a checkbook with a pulse. For the first time in decades, I refused to bend. And in that refusal, I felt the faintest taste of freedom. By the next morning, my resolve had sharpened into something solid. I was done answering calls, done defending myself to people who had never once defended me. Instead, I picked up the phone and scheduled an appointment with the one person I trusted to see things clearly, my attorney, Caroline Hayes. Caroline's office overlooked Central Park, a bright corner suite lined with shelves of heavy legal texts. She had been my lawyer for years, handling everything from the refinance on my apartment to a small inheritance dispute after my mother passed. Sharp, discreet, unshakable, that was Caroline. And today, I needed all three. She greeted me warmly, studying the exhaustion etched into my face. "Laura, you look like you haven't slept in days. Tell me what happened." I laid it all out, every painful detail. Sophie's voice, slicing through the rehearsal dinner, Ethan's silence, the humiliation of walking out alone, the late-night calls to cancel each vendor. By the time I finished, my throat felt raw, my hands trembling around the coffee cup she had offered me. Caroline listened without interruption, her expression calm, unreadable. When I finally stopped, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "Let me be very clear, Laura. You did nothing wrong. Every contract is in your name. Every dollar came from your account. If they want a wedding, they'll have to fund it themselves." A breath I hadn't realized I was holding slipped out, long and shaky, relief, sharp and fleeting, but real. "But what if they try to sue me?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Caroline's lips curved into the faintest smile. "On what grounds? That you withdrew your own money? They don't have a leg to stand on. And if they or their families are foolish enough to send you a letter, forward it to me. I'll handle it." For the first time in weeks, I felt something steady beneath my feet. But then Caroline pulled a folder from her desk, her tone shifting. "Laura, there's something else you need to know. I reviewed Ethan's accounts this morning. The college account you set up for him years ago at Hudson Bank. He's been pulling from it. Thousands, Laura. Just last month, $7,500, right after you paid the venue deposit." The blood drained from my face. That account had been my last tether, my unspoken promise to always be there if he fell. "I thought he stopped using it years ago." Caroline shook her head gently. "He didn't. And my advice? Freeze it now before he drains the rest." For a moment, grief clawed at my chest, but beneath it, something harder pressed forward. "Resolve. Do it," I whispered. Caroline nodded and reached for her phone. As she issued instructions to her paralegal, I sat in silence, feeling the strangest calm settle over me. For the first time in years, I was no longer the one being used. The war didn't begin in a courtroom. It began online. 2 days after the cancellations, Sophie's face appeared on my Facebook feed, red-eyed and glistening with tears. She sat on her couch, a tissue balled in her hand, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. The caption above her video read, "I never thought my future mother-in-law would destroy our wedding out of jealousy and spite." I pressed play. "She canceled everything," Sophie sobbed to the camera. "The venue, the flowers, the food. She even threatened the vendors. After all we've done for her, she's trying to ruin the happiest day of our lives." Her voice cracked, perfectly timed for sympathy. "Please pray for us as we try to rebuild what she tore down." The comments poured in within minutes. "Wow, what kind of mother does that? Toxic. Cut her off, she doesn't deserve you." Each word stabbed like a blade. For a moment, my hands trembled. But then I opened the Notes app on my phone and began saving every single screenshot. Comment by comment, lie by lie, I captured them all. I forwarded the folder to Caroline, who responded almost instantly. "Good. Keep documenting. This will help us if they push further." I thought I had seen enough, but the storm was just beginning. The next day, Sophie posted again, this time on Instagram, a photo of her and Ethan embracing, captioned, "We will not let hate win. Family is who supports you, not who tears you down." Hundreds of likes, dozens of supportive comments. My jaw clenched. They had turned me into the villain in their fairy tale. But villains, I reminded myself, always outlast false heroes. 2 nights later, the truth cracked open. I was sorting laundry when an email notification popped up on my laptop. The subject line read, "Final payment confirmation. Bali honeymoon package." My stomach dropped. It wasn't spam. It was addressed to me, with my credit card number listed at the bottom. $27,000 charged for an overwater villa, private butler service, unlimited champagne, and a yacht excursion. Then, the names on the booking, Ethan Mitchell and Sophie Carter. My hands shook as I scrolled further. Attached were other receipts, Louis Vuitton bridal luggage, Fifth Avenue shopping sprees, deposits for spa retreats, all charged to my account. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. They hadn't just taken my generosity for granted, they had plotted it. The wedding wasn't about love. It was a heist, A calculated drain of every dollar I had bled for. I took a long breath, steadied myself, and clicked forward to Caroline. Subject line: evidence. By morning, the tide had turned. Screenshots of Sophie's Bali booking began circulating in private wedding forums. Anonymous posts whispered the truth. The bride had been spending her mother-in-law's money. And once whispers begin in New York, they spread like wildfire. The collapse came faster than even I expected. By Friday, vendors began posting about unexpected openings in their schedules. The Manhattan ballroom that was supposed to host Ethan and Sophie's big day announced on their website that the date had been rebooked. The florist in Brooklyn uploaded photos of fresh arrangements for a different couple, captioned, "Excited to design for our new June wedding clients." The dominoes fell one after another. Guests who had already booked hotel rooms started calling me confused. They had seen Sophie's posts, but now the truth was trickling out. Some vendors, frustrated at being smeared online, let it slip. The contracts were never in Sophie or Ethan's name. They were in Laura Mitchell's. She canceled because she was treated horribly. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. The phone rang late that evening. Sophie's father, Gary, his voice clipped and forced. "Laura, listen. I don't know what Sophie said to you, but surely you don't want to ruin this wedding over one misunderstanding." I said nothing, waiting for him to reveal the truth. He cleared his throat. "If this is about money, we've had a rough year. Investments went bad, but I'm sure we can work something out if you reinstate the payments." There it was, the real reason. Not love, not family, money. "No," I said simply. "She told me to leave. Now she can pay for what she wants." His voice sharpened. "Do you know what this will do to her, to both families' reputations?" I ended the call mid-sentence. That night, Ethan's voicemail arrived. His tone was cold, flat. "Mom, you've destroyed everything. You've never been a real mother to me. Sophie was right. You're jealous, bitter. No wonder Dad left you." The words hit like a slap. My chest constricted, but I did not cry. Not this time. Instead, I sat in the dark of my living room, staring out at the glowing city skyline. I thought of all the nights I had worked double shifts at the hospital, the times I skipped meals so Ethan could have shoes for school, the vacations I never took. And now my only child reduced me to nothing more than a villain in his story. But grief gave way to clarity. I whispered into the empty room, "If you choose her over me, then let her carry you." For the first time in decades, the weight I carried for Ethan slipped from my shoulders. I felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because I finally knew the truth. The wedding had already crumbled. They just hadn't realized it yet. When the news spread, it didn't creep. It exploded. By the following week, New York's wedding circles were buzzing. A florist from Brooklyn posted anonymously in a bridal forum. "We warned her the mother-in-law held the contract. She didn't care. She thought she was untouchable." The story caught fire. Brides-to-be whispered. Vendors gossiped. Strangers shook their heads at the entitled couple who threw out the person paying for everything. Ethan's Midtown co-workers joined the chorus. He canceled his own wedding without warning. Or was it Sophie? Someone posted on LinkedIn, thinly veiled but clear enough. Ethan had just been up for a promotion. Now whispers followed him through every hallway. A man who couldn't even protect his own family was hardly management material. Sophie tried to control the narrative, but it only made things worse. Her Instagram, once filled with curated smiles and filtered perfection, became a battlefield. When she posted a vague photo of her engagement ring with the caption, "Still standing strong," comments flooded in. On whose dime? Strong? You mean spoiled? Imagine humiliating the woman who funded your whole wedding. Within days, she deleted her account. My phone, however, would not stop ringing. Relatives who had scolded me only a week earlier now stumbled over apologies. Marion whispered, "We didn't know Laura. We believed Sophie's version." "I'm so sorry." But apologies didn't matter anymore. They hadn't defended me when it counted. I let the calls go unanswered. One evening, as I sat with a cup of tea by my window overlooking Astoria, I scrolled through a news feed filled with strangers mocking Ethan and Sophie. Cautionary tale, one blog wrote. If you can't afford your own wedding, don't scream at the one paying. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing, just a cold clarity. That weekend, I packed a small bag and left the city behind. I had quietly booked a retreat weeks earlier, back when I still believed I'd need to escape the exhaustion of wedding chaos. Now it became something else entirely, a lifeline. The resort in Montauk greeted me with salt air and the endless sweep of the Atlantic. The sound of waves against the shore was softer than the city's chaos, but steadier, stronger. I checked into a suite with a balcony and a view that stretched forever. As I sat there, the ocean breeze brushing against my face, I realized the most important thing of all. Ethan and Sophie's storm no longer belonged to me. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in their demands. I was breathing. The morning their wedding should have taken place dawned clear and golden. From my balcony in Montauk, I watched the sunlight spill across the Atlantic, waves catching fire as they rolled in. I sat with a glass of champagne in hand, wrapped in the hotel's white robe, and let the breeze carry away the last of the ache. At noon, when Sophie should have been walking down the aisle, I was stretched out on a lounge chair, a plate of fruit at my side. I snapped a quiet photo of the horizon and posted it with a caption so simple it made me smile. Peace looks better on me. No names, no context, but I knew they would see it, and they would know. At that very hour, the Manhattan ballroom they had dreamed of was filled with laughter and flowers for another couple, strangers celebrating a love built on their own effort. Ethan and Sophie were left with nothing but a canceled guest list and a reputation in ruins. By Monday, the whispers had grown into a roar. Screenshots of Sophie's Bali honeymoon charges circulated through gossip sites and wedding groups. People dissected every post, every receipt, every careless display of entitlement. The comments were merciless. They treated her like a wallet. Imagine humiliating the woman who raised you. This is why you pay for your own wedding. Even Ethan's oldest college friends weighed in, some reminding the world of his habit of letting others clean up his messes. Their fairy tale had become a cautionary tale, told in harsh tones and mocking laughter across New York. Through it all, I remained silent. I didn't defend myself, didn't argue, didn't try to rewrite the story. The truth had a way of climbing out of the dark, all on its own. That week, Ethan sent me one final message. Mom, we made mistakes. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment before pressing delete. Forgiveness, I realized, didn't mean stepping back into the fire. It meant choosing never to be burned again. Sitting on that balcony, the salt air filling my lungs, I thought about the years I had spent bending myself into knots for others, working overtime shifts, skipping meals, covering every bill, saying yes when every part of me wanted to say no. I thought of how easily they had erased me when I no longer served their story. And then, for the first time in decades, I felt weightless. I raised my glass to the horizon, a silent toast to the woman I had finally become. Being alone, I realized, was not the worst fate. Being used was. Love without respect isn't love. Family isn't who drains you dry, it's who stands beside you, even when no one is watching. And sometimes, the bravest act of the love you can give yourself is to close the door for good. The waves rolled on, steady and endless, as if carrying my old life away, and I let them.